then it can affect you. For example, if we remember Magnus's loss to Gukesh, he was winning, but maybe because he wasn't feeling great, he was rushing things, took his eye off the ball, one blunder, and that was it, turnaround. So, okay, we expect Magnus to be slightly more recovered, and he starts with the Sicilian defense.
Okay.
Yes, a change of tactic from the world champion, because before he opened with a much more provocative opening. Here, this is more mainstream.
Yeah, more mainstream. It's very kind of you, Ivanka, to say provocative for Magnus's previous opening choices against Erigaisi. It was just, I don't know, plain bad. No, some of Magnus's openings, yeah, I'm joking that they were bad, but they were basically saying to Erigaisi, come and get me. But now he's saying to Erigaisi, okay, I know you're a good player now. I'm going to play some of my best openings. And this is a variation we call the Taimanov Sicilian, named after Mark Taimanov, very strong grandmaster.
Interesting that you mentioned bad openings. There's a story in Norwegian news today on all the top Norwegian newspapers that Magnus last week played a tournament on chess.com, opened with basically the worst possible move on the board, and his opponent, a player from Azerbaijan, just resigned because he was so offended.
Yeah, Ralph Mamedov, very strong Azerbaijani grandmaster. He just gave up after one move. He said, OK, he doesn't want to play chess like this. It's a very emotional reaction. It's kind of understandable. If someone did that against me, I would be like, come on, take it seriously. But, I mean, it's not necessarily a handicap. I mean, he's actually helping Mamedov, if anything. If Magnus is going to play a bad move, let him. That gives you a helping hand to beat Magnus, maybe. And we've seen Magnus do it before, so it's nothing personal.
Even against Jan-Christoph Duda, right?
Yeah, Magnus, it's as if he's rolling a dice or something. Sometimes he's just randomly choosing moves, and it's a psychological ploy. I mean, it's not breaking the laws of chess. It's a valid move, and if the opponent gets flustered, that's on them.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that in those games, Magnus was opening every white game with one g4, which is called the Grob opening. Very
that doesn't sound good.
Don't try it at home. It doesn't control the center, weakens your position. And as black, it was even worse. He was playing one g5, which is the Borg, which is like the opposite of the Grob. But also just very bad opening.
But he still won the game then, because his opponent just resigned.
Exactly. And he was doing it against everyone in that tournament, so it definitely wasn't anything personal. But I guess different players play chess for different reasons. Mamedov clearly wanted to play chess kind of on a proper professional level. Magnus wanted to play chess for fun, and they're both valid.
I think it's part of the chess upbringing, so to speak. I mean, the further east you go, the more kind of principled and classical you are. So if you were to play something very unusual and maybe even verging on the ridiculous, they would feel affronted because you're not giving them the respect that you deserve. Meanwhile, here in the West, it tends to be a bit more laissez-faire. You know, everyone is kind of just, OK, if you want to play a bad opening, play a bad opening against me. I'll enjoy getting that good position. But it is what it is. And meanwhile, some moves have appeared on the board.
Yeah, I think we're just worse at openings here in the West compared to...
Maybe that's it.
We just don't study enough openings. Meanwhile, yeah, it's a rare branch of the Taimanov Sicilian. So White has done some quirky stuff with his knights. White's knight has kicked the black queen back to the 8th row, and maybe if we jump in, we can show some of the ideas. Because this is a very standard position. White has played a variation we call the open Sicilian, throwing a pawn forward. There has been a trade of pawns, so there are some open lines. Often it gets very crazy with black keeping the king in the center, white often trying to attack that king. But first of all, Erigaisi played a move that I must admit I haven't seen in years. I've seen it before, but not on a clash between two top-class grandmasters, bringing the knight, moving this knight for the second time, attacking the black queen. Usually white, for example, brings a bishop out or sometimes uses the other knight. But after this attack, the black queen stepped back and the bishop coming out. Tell me if I'm wrong, Ivanka, but I don't remember many clashes in this.
Hardly any clashes, but it does seem to be a speciality of Austrian grandmaster Valentin Dragnev, who's played this 4 times.
With the white pieces.
With the white pieces, and he's won every single game. I must say that one of his opponents was another fellow grandmaster, but the rest of them were perhaps not as strong.
It's interesting to me because this knight looks misplaced. Meanwhile, Erigaisi castles, but this knight looks like it can be kicked back at any moment. Black can just push a pawn, kick it back. Actually, this forces a trade of knights because White's knight is required to defend its fellow here. White would first need to trade off this set of knights and only then step back and retreat. But Erigaisi is arguing that this pawn move that Black has gained is not useful at all. Black's queen is maybe misplaced on the back rank. and white is ahead in development, having developed a knight, bishop, and having castled already. So I don't know what you think, Ivanka. It's interesting, at least. Erigaisi is clearly trying to surprise Magnus, normally the other way around.
Yeah, I was going to say he's using the world champion's weapons against him. What we like to see, a bit of creativity. Yeah, I think white is doing okay. I have no problems with the white position. I think it's building up to be a very tense game. We're going to see a lot of the action develop in the middle part.
Yeah,
okay.
And I think Magnus needs to hurry up and get on with the middle part. He needs to move his bishop out of the way at some point and castle the black king before white gets too much activity going. So yeah, a very interesting start to this game.
Cool game. All right. It's the quarterfinals, you guys. So remember, best out of 4 rapid games to decide each of these quarterfinal matches. And if they are tied after those 4 rapid games, then we head into tie breaks with first 2 blitz games, and if they are still tied, it will be decided in Armageddon who goes through to the semifinals. This is only the first rapid game.
Yeah, it's an exciting day. I mean, it's going to be so frantic and so thrilling. I mean, the action is just going to be non-stop.
Oh, I can't wait.
And, well, talking about non-stop action, well, to celebrate that is the first day of the quarterfinals. Well, first day of the knockouts. Well, we are running a Caption This competition, and there is a prize up for grabs. One lucky winner will have a chance to win this Air Things View Plus. Maybe I'll pick it up and show it to the screen. And we're asking you to caption this picture. It's a quite tough one, I think.
It is
come
a
up
tough
with
one.
something funny, but
Yeah.
we have Jan Krzysztof Duda there with his Air Things device. And yeah, tweet us your answers. What are you captioning this?
Yeah.
And as always, you can answer using the hashtag #ChessChamps.
It's a tough one for you guys today. Jan Krzysztof Duda did pose with his AirThings device that gave him a lot of luck in the preliminaries. He won the whole preliminaries playing some fantastic chess. But what is a great caption for this? I was thinking something with a UFO, maybe.
I was thinking a frisbee,
Oh, that's a good app.
as well. I mean, it does look. I'm really poor with these type of things. But
David,
David,
of course, also, you know, be creative, do some painting in the picture if you want.
could
Maybe
Photoshop
he's-
the picture.
Yeah,
you
maybe
can
he's pointing at something else. I don't know.
I'm a bit worried about what the viewers are going to do now. Now you've given them permission.
They're great, though, I have to say.
Be nice.
I'm constantly impressed by the creativities of our viewers.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, we have seen the pawn step forward and attack the knight, and we have seen a trade of knights. And, well, I wasn't expecting this pawn recapture.
And if we just jump in, there's only been one move, but it's quite a critical change of pawn structure. So we did indeed see this knight attack. The knight couldn't move. First, you have to make this knight safe, and he decides to trade it off. And Ivanka, you're expecting...
Well, we're always taught, you know, you capture towards the centre, and it's a very common pattern in this particular Sicilian line that you capture that way, and then, as David highlights, you break in the centre, and there becomes a tense standoff with the pawns. And Magnus is just saying, no, I'm going to make my pawn structure almost symmetrical and drive your knight back. And he's accepting that he's maybe slightly worse because of the light squared bishop that's trapped behind its own pawns.
Yeah, this is definitely the problem piece for black. I guess Magnus's idea, once the white knight retreats, Arjun now just choosing which square. It's got a choice of 2 sensible squares, essentially. But once he drops it back, for example, this square, I think Magnus's idea is to block up the centre.
But
To get this bishop out.
isn't this like waving a red flag for white to accelerate the play and try to blast open the centre whilst the king is in the centre? Because if white can do this, then black is going to be in big trouble.
Yeah, Magnus's king, not ideally placed. I guess you mentioned this in the past, Ivanka. Magnus, he says, it's fine if you're within 2 moves of castling, and here he can maybe gain some time with the black bishop and check, and then run to safety. But I agree, it looks very scary for black. Here, the white pawns are very nice in the centre of the board, but Erigaisi chooses a different square. He goes back in a different direction. In this position, he went back to the centre. And now Magnus reacted, not with a pawn push, because maybe now white's knight can nestle in on this nice f5 square. If black wants to remove it, he might have to trade off a bishop for it. But instead, Magnus brings his bishop out, gaining time. There's a battery now against this h2 pawn. That would come with a nasty check. And Magnus is just trying to gain time in order to castle next move. Finally gearing up towards the end of the opening. Better late than never to castle. Erigaisi drops his knight back. And I'm expecting Magnus now either to block up the centre, as we showed a moment ago, or better late than never again. Get that king castled.
He's moved that knight a lot, hasn't
I was going to comment the same thing. I mean, to my untrained eye, I mean, that's an awful lot of moves with the knight. And, you know, we're always taught in the opening, don't go wandering around with one piece. You know, you've got to be harmonious with your forces.
Yeah, he's moved it 4 times out of his first 11 moves. That's just one knight. The other knight, which got traded off, he moved it 3 times. So out of his first 11 moves, 7 moves were with White's knights, and one of them's gone. So that's not ideal strategy. Black's queen has moved a couple of times, though. Black's made a lot of pawn moves as well, now blocking up the centre, Magnus. So it's kind of swings and roundabouts. Both sides have lost some time, but they are kind of breaking some opening rules. And meanwhile, Magnus at least has good air quality. I was a bit worried a few moves ago, he put his head down, we could only see the top of his hair, that massive hair, and yeah, it looked like he was kind of napping or something, but it looks like he's in good conditions to play.
Yeah. From what I can see on the camera, he does look a little bit more healthy today, I would say.
Yeah.
And he did go skiing yesterday, so he must be feeling better.
That's true. He looks at least like he's kind of curious about this position, and that's when Magnus shines, but this move... Talking of curious, Ivanka, it's a bit of a strange one.
He's asking all the questions to Arjun. He's saying, hey, you know, are you going to trade your bishop for the knight? Just break up my pawn structure? What are you going to do? I mean...
I would probably just capture it in a heartbeat.
I would capture it as well, and then I would try to restrain that pawn for all it's worth.
Yeah. Weaknesses long term, and you want to restrain it by bringing the white knight to the side.
One idea, yeah.
And that's a nice move. This is actually an outpost. Normally we say knights on the rim are dim. Actually, this season, a lot of players, they've been avoiding making that mistake, putting their knights on the edge of the board. We saw that mistake made several times last season. But now the white queen can come out, attack this weakness. The white knight, the reason it's good here on the outpost is because it can actually re-centralize later to the f5 square, maybe once you support it. To me, it looks very nice. Magnus's idea, surely now, is not to castle on the king side, because here his king would be too open. If you look at the pawn structure around it, it's too fractured. The idea must be the other way, not this way, to move the queen instead and castle on the long side.
Ooh.
Which would mean action. And
do you think this is the most likely now?
I think if Erigaisi in the current position, if he captures this knight, then that's almost certainly going to happen. Magnus's idea is that, yes, he's given up kind of hoping for a healthy pawn structure, but instead he has opened up a line towards the white king. So if opposite side castling happens, then at least he has a head start in any attack. Really, again, it's that word provocative, right, Ivanka?
And he does it.
He plays it. Erigaisi's not afraid. He's standing his ground. This is the most principled move. Maybe it's even the best move, and Ivanka's idea on the board. And yeah, basically he's saying to Magnus, I don't trust you, I'm going to go for these pawns long term. They are very, very weak.
And that's the right approach against Magnus. You know, you just got to say, I don't trust you. The proof is in the pudding, as we say. We have a lot of strange expressions in English. I'm sorry to our viewers and to Kaya as well.
I love them.
And yeah, the queen steps forward. She gets ready to perhaps defend the pawn that's now come under fire.
I mean, this means it's going to be a crazy start to the quarterfinals, right? Kings on opposite sides of the boards.
Yeah, exactly. And I think every game we've seen between these two, even last month, even in the prelims this month, when Magnus has said black, it's nearly always opposite side castling, or at least one side castles on the queen side, and that just always naturally leads to these really imbalanced games, and it's already imbalanced. Magnus taking some big risks.
So we have, you know, chessable courses on everything, you know, all kinds of openings and middle game and end game. Are there people who are experts on castling and castling either this side or this side and opposite sides?
Or not at all.
Yeah, that's a good point, Ivanka. It's a strategy. Sometimes you forget to castle, but you keep your opponent guessing. Maybe that's what Magnus is trying to do now.
Hang on a second. I was looking at some of the games in the Caracan, and I was looking at David's games. You do this a lot in the Caracan. He doesn't castle, and then he just waits with his king. And then when you least expect it, he moves.
Yeah, it's like a staring contest. It's like I'm staring and then I'm going to pretend I'm going one way and you actually, as soon as you look away, I'll run the other way. Yeah, that's the strategy in chess. It's very risky. You've got to kind of attain a certain level before you can get away with it. Because if Magnus leaves it too long, it could backfire. The Black King could come, could come under a heavy attack. But I think we're going to see it now.
Yeah.
There we go.
There we go.
It's on the board. And, well, action has been initiated. And Erigaisi has gone for the plan of perhaps controlling the central line.
Yeah.
I kind of like this. I think this is a good approach. I don't think he should be going over-eager on the left side of the board, pushing up pawns. Instead, piece play.
Yeah, and I really don't understand what Magnus is doing, to be honest, because this pawn push, I mean, in general, we love it when Harry the H-pawn is pushed up the board towards the opponent's king, but it's a lone ranger. This black pawn alone is not going to do any damage against White's really nice pawn structure in front of his king there. Also, in any endgame, that black H-pawn is going to be weak. It's got no buddies around it. It's an isolated pawn. It's an easy target for White's bishop and White's knight. Yeah, I mean, long-term, it's horrible for black. Magnus is playing for dynamic chances now, but I wouldn't be surprised exactly if Erigaisi just says, OK, I'm fixing your weakness, and now he can kind of bully Magnus with the thought of trading off pieces because that black pawn structure is just so bad. And, OK, Magnus, meanwhile, improving one of his bishops at least. So black, he does have dynamic play in terms of open lines, and he's got the bishop pair. Often we say the bishop pair is worth a pawn if the centre is kind of open out there, but at the moment it's still a bit blocked, so White's knight is doing very well.
Okay. And that knight really, as well as being located in a fantastic square, I mean, it's really uncoordinating black's forces. I mean, I just don't see Magnus even dreaming about an attack.
Yeah.
And great play by Erigaisi.
Yeah, still some big decisions ahead, but maybe we can explain as well why White's knight is so strong and why black won't just take it off the board. For example, if White waits, I'm expecting, because this tension is quite unpleasant, I'm expecting at some point White to step the pawn forward, move the king forward, off that diagonal. But the White knight can never really be captured. For example, here, if black's king moves, the White king moves, both to safe squares, then despite the fact it's opposite colour bishops, White is almost winning strategically, again, because these pawns are just easy targets for the White queen. And even if you defend those pawns, White can just step back and weaknesses everywhere. This pawn is just dropping off the board. It's on a light square. He's fixed it, the isolated pawn. And that's what you want to do strategically, fix your opponent's weaknesses. And this pawn is never, ever going anywhere. Ideally, you want to kind of step it a square back, but pawns don't move backwards, unfortunately. And looking very good long-term for White. So Magnus needs something now.
He did choose to move that pawn 2 squares forwards. So why didn't he just move it 1?
Yeah, that's a very good question, Kaya. I think if we just backtrack, rewind a couple of moves, I'm not sure he even needs to move it 1 square because here the knight would attack it. Maybe just leave it here as long as possible because then it's harder to attack for White. Only the White queen can ever attack the pawn if it sits on the square, whereas on the square it moved to after Erigaisi fixed it. Now it's easy to attack, for example, long-term by the White knight, or later the White bishop can attack it. So, yeah, I'm just nitpicking here. It's a tiny little detail, but it might be relevant for the rest of the game.
Yeah. Erigaisi now thinking for over 2 minutes, but the bar is definitely over to his side. Would you be confident if you were playing this with the white pieces now?
I'm never confident against Magnus, but I mean, I'd be as confident as I could be, I guess. Yeah, I mean, I think the opening's been a success for Erigaisi. What about you?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's in a great position for Erigaisi. The only thing he has to do, he has to be careful about his king. He has to basically be aware of black's dark squared bishop and just take the necessary precautions. If you can control that piece and you can control the rooks as well in terms of like making sure that there's no sacrifices, anything to blast open the position, then white is in full control. And meanwhile, I saw some answers to our caption this competition. You guys are so creative. I quite like Kev 007's answer, who says, wow, these extra strong mints are a lot bigger than I remember. That's good.
Do we have a winner already?
No, Gaia.
But that's a good one.
That is a very good one.
That's my humor. Very nice, Kev. Kev, was it?
Yeah.
Kev 007. Ooh.
Yeah, keep them coming. Remember, it's a picture of Duda with an Airthings device. We want you to caption this picture using the hashtag #ChessChamps.
And meanwhile, a pawn push from Erigaisi. Again, I'm slightly surprised that both sides pawn pushers, to be honest. They're both taking risks strategically. White's put all his pawns on the left side on light squares. That means he has no control over the dark squares. And Black just happens to have an uncontested dark square bishop. So slightly surprising. I thought he'd try and put pawns on dark squares on that side of the board. Erigaisi, normally you want to put pawns on the opposite colour to your own bishop. But, OK, no harm at the moment. And Magnus just playing a move you should always go for when we castle queenside. Move the black king one square closer to safety in the corner. And Jovanka, what about this one?
That one took me by surprise. I mean, I thought the bishop would step back and, we would see Erigaisi offer a trade of rooks. I did not expect this because Erigaisi is like voluntarily saying to Magnus, hey, why don't you cripple my pawn structure? And Magnus just says, well, actually, I'm not going to get distracted by those type of things. I'm going to go straight for an attack towards your king.
Yeah, and any attack still needs a few moves to, set things up, essentially. But you're right, Jovanka. I'm surprised Magnus just avoided this or just dodged the question so quickly. In the previous position, OK, we do see Erigaisi move his king there. Black could definitely have considered taking this bishop off the board. And whose pawn structure is worse now? I don't know. These are doubled pawns, blockaded by a nice knight on an outpost. But these are also very weak pawns here. These three, isolated, doubled. For example, the black queen at some point can start coming over and start kind of eyeing up these pawns, eyeing up this pawn. I'm very surprised Magnus just ignored this possibility, but maybe he's playing on the clock situation. He's got 3 minutes more than Erigaisi, but also it's that anti-young player chess, just making it strategically difficult. He moves his rook. Erigaisi reacted quite quickly by moving his king. Very sensible. The king is actually on the same file as a rook. It's on the same diagonal as a bishop, so why not just park it on a safer square? It's closer to the center, which is a bit vulnerable, but in general, a better square than it stood on. And same question, do you take this bishop off the board? Eventually, you might run out of other ideas.
Yeah, it kind of feels like because Magnus didn't do it on the last go, that he's not going to do it now. He's going to let that question linger in the air for a while and maybe just improve the queen.
Yeah, the black queen's not great. Where would you improve her to? This square, maybe this square?
Yeah, I was thinking all the way to the a5, but I mean, I am actually at a loss for a plan for black.
Yeah, I guess there's just this kind of standoff with the two bishops. It's like, you take me. No, please, you take me. After you. That type
the
of...
polite bishops again.
Yeah, the polite... Oh, that's a really good term for them. The polite bishops. Neither one wants to take the other one.
No, you hang up first. No, you hang up first.
This is such a British thing as well.
Yes, it is.
When I was in Austria, there was security checks, and there was an Austrian there who was like, no mobile phones, good, go, just go in. And then there was a Brit who was doing the security checks, and he was like, mobile phones, no mobile phones, oh, frightfully good. If you could step over here, please.
It's much nicer.
Yeah.
No, it's polite Brits. I like it.
Yeah, and black doesn't want to take the white bishop because then white's knight will forever be sitting on an outpost, and vice versa. If white takes the black bishop, then a pawn will recapture, kicking white's knight away from an outpost. So it's all about keeping that white knight where it is, and that's why the bishops are so polite to each other. And, I mean, could we see a scenario where both sides just kind of play waiting moves, just daring the opponent, testing the opponent's patience? The problem is, it's easy to improve white's position. You can imagine white's rook in the center, just stepping up one square or maybe two squares, and then the other rook in the corner sliding across, doubling up the two white rooks on the open d file. But black's rooks, what are they doing? One of them in the corner, the black rook in the far corner, is tied down defending that black h pawn that we talked about. It's tied down for the rest of the game, essentially. So Magnus is playing without a piece.
And thinking now, for over 3 minutes, he has ticked under 7 minutes now, Magnus Carlsen. The bar is slightly over to Erigaisi's side. In a tense game, because we do see a lot of pieces in the middle there.
Yeah, very tense at the moment. We mentioned the opening went in Erigaisi's favour, but he still has a huge amount of difficult questions to answer. And it's not clear who wants to simplify things. Erigaisi, when he's won most of his games this tournament, if we remember yesterday when he knocked out Anish Giri, it was just so complicated, pieces all over the board. I think it favours Erigaisi maybe if it's really, really complicated and messy and calculation to be done. Magnus doesn't mind pieces on the board as long as it's kind of a slower strategic game. Endgames, we saw the Aimchess stats earlier, they will favour Magnus. So, yeah, it's just what comes next. That's the big question.
It's a bit of a mystery, right? I am also wondering whether Magnus will resort to very extreme measures. So he goes forward with his rook. There was a concrete threat of attacking the queen. So Erigaisi immediately pushes the pawn and controls the f4 square. And the kind of radical move that I was thinking, and please don't laugh at me, David.
I promise I won't, unless it's really bad.
I mean, it goes against the rules of chess, basically.
I know what you're going to say.
You should never push pawns on the side you're weakest. Yeah, I was thinking, can you attack that bishop and just try to...
You're tired of the stare-off.
Yes.
Jovanka, you really want to force this bishop to move. That's so rude. That's not polite.
I know it's not. I know it's not polite, but I mean, it was an idea. Maybe it's kind of more of a concept. Actually, I wasn't thinking necessarily this is the right time, but just something so that you can push white back a bit.
Yeah, I agree as well. It was on my radar, maybe more before this rook landed on this square. Because now white's bishop, as we mentioned, it definitely doesn't want to take the black bishop because now black's pawn structure is still bad, but at least you kick this knight out of its dream home on f5. And so therefore I think Erigaisi would answer this with just dropping back. And the reason I think it's less attractive now is because when the white queen moves, the rook will be hit. You lose a bit of time. But I agree. I think Magnus at some point might get itchy fingers and he might be tempted to just push this pawn forward because the tension is just almost unbearable. Wow, look at the evaluation bar there. Reacting after the offer of a rook exchange by Magnus. The problem is, white can just control the open file now if he wants. First move that comes to mind, at least, is a rook exchange, and now the other white rook, which was previously dormant, asleep, doing nothing. You can bring it across, gain time against the black queen, and you control the open file when she moves. Still complicated. You still have to evaluate this type of pawn structure that we mentioned earlier. For example, the black queen coming to attack this isolated pawn. These two are targets as well, but it does feel like black's rook is a bit clumsy. It can get hit by the white knight at any point, could get kicked back. It's really heating up. Despite what the evaluation bar says, it's, for a human at least, quite difficult to comprehend, and it's not immediately winning for white. It's maybe a long-term advantage that he has to nurture very carefully. Erigaisi. What about you, Jovanka? Do you see anything better, maybe, than changing the rooks?
I'm trying to train myself to look at the forcing moves. So actually, I was considering, I really liked your rook takes rook, but then I was thinking about the idea of throwing in bishop takes bishop. And now I know we were saying that this is not good. It kind of corrects black's pawn structure, but then you do have some attacks where you can come and attack the rook, and then you're threatening to come in and take some pawns. I'm such a materialist.
Yeah, why not? If the black rook moves, you can consider at some point, either before or after a rook exchange, taking this pawn. This one requires calculation, but it's definitely on the radar. Maybe that's what Erigaisi is calculating right now. So this is the current position. He's most likely to play rook takes rook, or maybe even trade off the bishops at some point. Watch out for this idea of going with his knight to attack the rook. OK, he doesn't. He's a man who likes his tension. Erigaisi pushes a pawn forward. That is aimed against your idea, Jovanka, of pushing a pawn in front of the black king. So he's just saying, OK, I'm going to put pretty much all my pieces, all my pawns, all on light squares. Whoops.
Oh.
Sorry, that was a slip. But yeah, everything on light squares, basically, because black has a dark squared bishop, and black's dark squared bishop will be hitting nothing. He's playing checkers, but in reverse. So, yeah, really tense.
Sensible. It seems to be a little bit the calm before the storm in all the quarterfinal matches as well. This one, the bar is definitely over to Erigaisi's side, but in the other ones, the bars are roughly in the middle in all the other game ones in those quarterfinal matches. But we know there definitely will be drama in all of them. They will all be decided today, if not in the 4 rapid games, then in Blitz or Armageddon tiebreaks. Calm before the storm. But this one, is the storm already coming?
Yeah, the storm is brewing. And again, it's just up to Erigaisi to pull the trigger at some point and maybe exchange rooks like we showed and bring the other white rook into the game, or maybe he just continues to wait. But either way, the computer loves his position. That means that maybe there's something immediate. I'm really hating what Magnus's rook, though, is just doing on that g4 square. Normally, we like putting pieces in the opponent's half of the board. It's annoying for the opponent. But black's rook over there on the right, OK, he swaps a set of pieces. But that black rook is just trapped. It's just on a bad square.
In fact, there was a very good idea that the computer indicated, and it was just about grabbing material.
So something along the lines you showed, the white knight going to attack that black rook. But, OK, what he's done is very human, at least.
I think so. I mean, it makes much more sense because computers can navigate all these unworldly complications. But for humans, it's more about control. And look at Erigaisi, completely dominating the position. I mean, Magnus is just floundering, you know, trying to find an idea, and it's not easy.
Yeah, everything on light squares. Magnus is kind of playing one-dimensional chess. He has to find some active squares with his queen. It's not... I just don't really see it at the moment. And yet again, you can trade bishops, but do you really want to? Once you trade off your bishop pair, you have no influence on the light squares if you're black.
Yeah.
And also, white now has the only open file in the position, the d file, once the black queen runs away.
Yeah, I mean, where would you put the queen? I mean, I think I would probably line her up with the dark squared bishop.
Yeah. Bring her somewhere to this left side of the board, but where? It's not clear exactly what she's going to be doing. And, OK, 3 minutes for Magnus, 4 minutes for Erigaisi. It could be decided in a time scramble. This one could turn around if Erigaisi loses control. That's the hardest thing in chess, keeping control forever. You nearly never see a game where from move 1 till move 40, 50, it's complete control. Normally, there's one slip, or as soon as your opponent gets back in or starts to scare you, you kind of freak out and the momentum changes.
Yeah.
At least from my experience.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, just to kind of elaborate, normally, like, one side is like full control, and then the opponent just makes one slight break for freedom, and the other person panics.
Yeah.
Happened to me lots of times.
Panic is the one inevitable thing in chess, is that we all panic at some point in every game.
In every game?
Every game. Even if we're completely winning, like, you're about to give checkmate, then it's like, oh, whoops. Or the clock, But, OK, you'll move your anchor after a bishop exchange. The queen comes out.
Yeah. Have you ever had that, David, where you've just forgotten about the clock and suddenly you realise you've got like 2 seconds left and you have to make a move and you just bash the clock? And...
Story of my life, Ivanka. Simon always says he sees me like, oh, David's so calm, playing with 1 second and then pressing the clock. It's just panic. I just look at it. I'm like, oh, 1 second. It's just become second nature.
Yeah, I must admit, it is quite satisfying in chess, you know, just to watch people panic. I mean, you feel for them. Yeah, I mean, but at the same time, you're kind of thinking, oh, I'm so glad it's not me.
Yeah.
Like, a few people have some towels, like someone I know, I'm very close to, my husband, does this.
Oh. When he's stressed?
Yeah, when he's panicking, he's like, oh, no. Oh, sorry, Anna.
I'd love to play poker against him.
Yeah.
No poker face there.
No, he's quite good at poker, actually. Okay. But just in chess, you know, there's remaining when the clock starts ticking down, you know.
Because you don't have that in poker, actually. You don't have a clock in poker.
Yeah, you don't have anyone going, move.
Yeah.
I mean, okay, can you sit there and
Unless the people on your table are really trash-talking you, I guess.
That's true.
Can you sit there and have a think for a long time in poker?
Yeah, I think... I mean, we miss Lawrence now, the poker expert, but I think you can sit there for a while. It's probably bad manners to sit there for like 15 minutes and think, like you do in chess sometimes. But, OK, the white king moving, safer square.
OK. We have some poker experts in the control room.
Bring them in.
I think if someone says time, then sort of a clock starts ticking. You have a time limit. Yeah. You need to make your bet, or
It's rare to see a think for more than a few minutes. I think.
Exactly. Yeah.
But OK, black's queen is coming in, attacking some of those weaknesses. Magnus looking for counterplay. This is the type of thing Magnus, he's just trying to scare Erigaisi. I don't think it's necessarily a good move, but it's at least forcing Erigaisi to worry about those white pawns on the left side.
Yeah, well, how is he going to defend them? That is not a easy question. I mean, I probably would go on a counter-attack myself, and he does. Yeah. Attack the rook, make it move back.
Yeah, black's rook needs to move simply. I'm not sure where it goes. Maybe to sit next to the white knight, to attack that white knight. But the knight's attacking some pawns. White's queen's also attacking those double pawns. Yeah. Those black F pawns, to be honest, I just want to get rid of them. They're just so ugly.
Actually, no, like the more I look at this position, the more I really don't like Magnus's position, because the white knight is going to grab the f7 pawn. From there, it will jump forward towards the centre, and before you know it, it's looking at the black king.
Yep, just 2 or 3 jumps, attacking the rook first. You grab a pawn. For example, if Magnus does the same, then, as you say, Jovanka, you might even jump this way. And combined with the rook coming in, you're going for the black king. OK, we don't see that on the board because Magnus was terrified of letting that knight jump further, so he actually covered this square. But now, OK, I was going to say, is Erigaisi going to get greedy and grab this pawn? This would have got complicated after the black rook moves to attack the white queen and knight at the same time. Maybe this double attack was too scary to deal with, so he plays positional chess. I like it for Erigaisi, bringing the queen over, plugging all the holes, and again, earlier we saw the polite bishops, now it's the polite queens. It's like, no, please, you take me first. And if Magnus takes Erigaisi's queen, then suddenly the white pawns are healthy again, connected once more. So you definitely don't want to trade queens if you're Magnus. And OK, the standoff continues. He moves his rook to kick away the white knight. But now, I mean, you can retreat it back to a great square.
I mean, you could even get greedy.
Come back this way.
And go that way. I mean, if you want to keep full control. Yeah, no, I like this one. This is the one that I'm first drawn to.
Do you think Magnus has missed this one? Because it looks like it wins a pawn.
And the bar now says it looks like it's winning for Erigaisi.
Yeah. It's weird because this position, it's normally you would put it on an outpost. It's really nice and anchored here. But you're basically putting your knight on a square where black's knight started the game.
Oh, look at Magnus.
And he's realised, but Erigaisi, does he have the camera open? Let's go back to Magnus on the camera now, because I think he's realised that he's blundered. He's missed this knight move that you spotted, Jovanka. It wasn't on my radar, I've got to admit. OK, he trades queen.
He trades queen, and now he's going to do it.
OK, where's he going to put his knight? If he comes back, maybe some chances for Magnus.
Yeah, but he's going to go forward. He's gone for it.
Wow.
And that's it. Magnus is going to go a pawn down.
Yeah, and it's not just any pawn. Once that pawn falls, that the white knight's going to gobble up. The rest of his position's going to collapse. Wow. Yeah, black's knight starts the game on this square. What's he doing? Yeah, really nice move from Erigaisi. It's easy to miss the type of move, right? Normally you think, oh, I've got my back ranks protected, but or at least that's what I think.
Yeah.
Sometimes I just forget when the opponent can jump right into the heart of my position.
This is kind of one of those ironies, right? It's super easy for the defender to miss this type of move, but it's actually very easy for the attacker to see it. They're like, forward, F for forward. But yeah.
Black's rook is just so bad.
So bad, yeah. And white's rook is also going to dive into the 7th row. I mean, it's just getting worse and worse.
Yeah, Magnus, I mean, it was just that decision to allow those doubled pawns. I think it's backfired long term. Erigaisi kept control so well. There will still be a couple of moments where he has to show good composure to win this one, but he's done it perfectly so far.
Yeah. And is there any, I was going to say, is there any hope based on this active king? Go rogue or go home? Yeah. I mean, I guess the rook can come up to the 7th row and just put a stop to the king marching happily forward, and it does.
White's rook dominates. I mean, it controls everything. It's in 7th heaven, as we say, on the 7th rank. And it's just got so many targets. I think this is Magnus's final hope to go active with his king, munch on some pawns. Actually, black's... he's banking everything on the black A pawn. So he's going to get rid of the pawn next to that black king right now, and then he's going to throw his A pawn forward and hope that while the rest of his position crashes and burns, that he's quick enough. But first you need to push the black A pawn, then you need to get the black king out the way. Not easy.
It's going to take a while.
It's going to take a long time. White's knight can just get greedy now.
And it should. And now the rook steps forward.
Yeah.
There it is.
2 pawns up now, or he will be in a moment. Erigaisi, 1 pawn and counting.
Yeah. I mean, it's not so easy for Erigaisi to establish his own pass pawn, despite being quite a bit material up.
Yeah.
So that he has, Magnus has that hope. I mean, when you're defending this type of position, just go as active as you can. Just rely on those slim chances, because hope, it's like the Harry Potter quote, is like that little flicker of light in the darkness.
Oh, beautiful.
I don't know whether he said that exactly, but...
It sounded about right.
Have you ever seen Ted Lasso, the TV show?
You mentioned it once.
There's the final episode of the first season. The title is "It's the Hope That Kills You."
Oh.
And it's the same in chess. It's like you get your hope up, and then it all falls apart anyway. And then it's like, why didn't I even get optimistic in the first place?
Very brutal. Ted Lasso, is that the football coach?
Yep.
Yeah.
Jason Sudeikis.
Yeah. Yeah, on that subject, apparently hope is the big relationship killer as well. So yeah, maybe don't hope unless you're
Hope was
defending
a
a
good
terrible position.
Is there any hope for Magnus in this position?
Maybe not after this move. This is a really sneaky one by Erigaisi. It's just so impressive. These young Indian players, they are always on the lookout for tactics. Even when they've got a strategic advantage, most of us would be thinking, OK, let's grab some pawns, let's round things up. But does this win a piece, Ivanka? How is Black's bishop going to survive? OK, it does move, but now Black's king is completely trapped. He's got to be careful not to get checkmated, Magnus. Let's just show why that pawn wasn't edible, why you couldn't capture this pawn. Erigaisi here, rather than the move I was thinking, take a pawn for free, he threw this pawn forward, setting a trap. The bishop has not many safe squares. If it takes this pawn, this would be a check. The king has to move, and a second check, and the king has to move again, and you gobble up the bishop. You win a piece. So Magnus's only safe square, I mean, this is such a clever tactic. The only safe square for this bishop is this one.
But Black can hardly move, and I'm wondering whether the white king can go and trap the black king. I mean,
You want to just dance over here?
I mean, it's a journey, but, you know, why not? And, OK, he's pushing forward with his pawn.
Yep. I like this plan, Ivanka. Just move the king. For example, let's just say Black waits for the next few moves. You're using the white king to take away Black's only escape square. And here, this would be checkmate. Really, really nice. But Erigaisi didn't go for this one. He did instead something similar, I guess. He just pushed a pawn forward just to lock in this black bishop. And where's this bishop going? There's just no safe squares. Look at what Magnus has done.
He has to go back, my friend.
Yeah, he's moved his bishop, and now he has to go back. But actually, wait, this is checkmate again. Is Magnus's bishop gone?
Yeah, that's it. He has to give up his bishop, and it will be game over.
Erigaisi's about to win now. He can just take this bishop. The only small trap is after the bishop is captured, the black king will move, white's rook moves, and the pawn starts running, but I think you can easily come back and stop this pawn with your knight. He doesn't even grab it, Erigaisi. This is really classy. He doesn't want to allow the black king onto the b file. He's still cutting it off. First, he gets greedy, and the knight is coming back. He's still going to win the bishop with a simple knight check, and that's going to be the end of the game.
Wow.
Any moment now, Magnus is going to resign.
Oh, what a start to this quarterfinal match. Erigaisi about to win his second game in a row against the world champion. Incredible.
Wow, actually, there was a trap that Magnus was setting, but Erigaisi didn't fall for it. If the white knight had come back and taken the black bishop, what black's king would have come in, just like it's doing in the game. The problem is now you are 3 pawns down as Magnus, and Erigaisi just needs to move his rook to a safe square.
Yeah.
Still completely winning.
Just don't put it on the E1 square. That's the only square I would say. Just, but it.
He puts it on that square, Ivanka. And Magnus frowns.
Yeah, that was the one square I was like, no, just don't do it because of bishop takes pawn. But there we're seeing it. Erigaisi's worked it out that you can give a check. But the black king will take a step down and attack the rook. OK, it steps forward, but now the rook can just lift itself up and give another check.
Yep. White's rook can also go and defend its knight, perhaps, but a check is easiest. As you mentioned, still 2 pawns up for Erigaisi. Maybe I wrote it off too soon. Maybe Magnus is fighting. He's still completely losing, but the longer the game goes on, the more frustrated Erigaisi might become. Rook and bishop do work better than rook and knight. That's one thing I've learned from you, Ivanka. The knight now defending its pawn.
And Magnus does have an active king as well. So there's still some fighting chances left.
Yeah, it's not looking good, but there's hope. There's a glimmer, a tiny little bit of hope here. And Erigaisi still needs to win it. Winning positions are the hardest ones to finish off in chess. I'm expecting at some point the white knight to come back into the game. But first, Erigaisi goes after black's f-pawn. Yeah, that's the problem for Magnus. His 3 pawns are all isolated, the black pawns. And that black rook is pretty terrible.
And yeah, it still is. Yeah, there's no way it's getting into the game.
It is an endgame, though. Magnus's strength, usually.
And Erigaisi just moves his rook forward, defending everything. And Magnus attacking the rook, causing it to dislodge. So he's won back a pawn.
Huh.
Only
Is
one.
Erigaisi struggling to find the killer blow in this game?
It feels like it. The evaluation bar thinks he's still completely in control,
Yeah.
but he was 3 pawns up just a few moves ago. Then it disappeared, then it became 2. Now it's only 1 pawn. So the momentum's in Magnus's favour unless Erigaisi can find a killer blow, and this might be the killer. Again, it's that knight going to the top of the board, and it's easy to see for an attacker from this point of view, but maybe for Magnus, not so easy. The black pawns are just dropping like flies.
And let's see, knight takes pawn.
Yeah. White's knight can get greedy. It looks pretty safe.
It looks like we can have another decided game here in the first round of the quarterfinals. Mamedyarov, the bar just shot up for him with the black pieces in game 1 against Abdusatorov.
And, okay, Magnus clinging on. It's back to a 2-pawn advantage for Erigaisi.
And Magnus, he's such a wily character. You know, he knows how to make an opponent's life difficult because, I mean, yes, Erigaisi has all these pawns extra, but it's difficult to advance them. And the pawn on c5 is dropping. So still some risk in the position for Erigaisi. It's not as clean as he would have liked it to be.
Yeah, especially not with 30 seconds left on the clock. And actually, this is the second time we've seen this position now, so they have repeated this position once. Erigaisi has to find something else if he wants to win the game. He brings his king forward. Very sensible. However, there is a pin, so White's knight is pinned. It can't move because of the tension on the f-file between the rooks. OK, I was going to say, it's hard to find a useful move anyway, but he's going back with his bishop. He's threatening to attack that knight with the black bishop. And that's why Erigaisi pushes forward, because now the king protects White's rook. Problem is, things are disappearing. He wanted to win black's remaining pawn. He didn't want to swap it off. So there's, again, this tiny bit of hope if black can give up his bishop for all of White's remaining pawns. It's asking a lot, though.
That is asking a lot from the position. And he steps up with his rook. And now it's a case of just pushing your pawns forward.
You can come in with the white king as well and go attack that black bishop.
I like your plan.
Yeah. OK, he does push one of the pawns forward onto a light square.
Maybe just to guard some squares against the black king.
Yeah, getting ready to maybe retreat the white knight. White's main weakness is the c-pawn, and White's c-pawn can be defended by his knight on the next move. OK, Magnus. I've got to say, Magnus has played better maybe since he went into a losing endgame than he did in the earlier phase of the game. He's made it really difficult for Erigaisi.
But I have to say, I've been very impressed by Erigaisi. I mean, the way he's handled this position, he hasn't really given Magnus a chance. Yeah, he might have taken the long route, but still, the result has never been in doubt.
Yeah, not yet. And it's just about whether he can finish it off.
So he basically needs to get one of those white pawns marching forwards. Which one is his best bet?
It's hard to say. I think he wants to keep them all intact. So one pawn might distract the black army, and then you kind of use it as a distraction, then you go with another pawn. But he's defending everything right now, apart from this one. But now the other black pawn drops. So it's 2 pawns versus 0. And actually, if black's king was all the way, maybe at the top of the board, in front of the white pawns, there's some serious drawing chances. But the black king is so far away that it feels like white's pawns eventually will be able to race too fast for the black king to keep up. So still winning, but still some work to be done.
OK.
Definitely.
Magnus is, of course, very used to being the one on sort of the white side of this kind of position, grinding it out, getting those 2 pawns over there. How used is he to defending this?
He's not used to it at all.
No.
Magnus very rarely enters any endgames where he's dead lost, like this one. And I think we're about to see it, Kaya. White's pawns are going to step forward.
OK.
I mean, you can choose either of them right now to march forward. White, normally you want to kind of push them in unison, so 4th rank, then 5th, 5th, 6th, 6th, but OK, White's h-pawn is very close.
A big threat on the board. The rook is threatening to give a check to the king, and Erigaisi, of course, sees that and protects his knight.
Yeah, and this is why black's king is on the wrong side of the board, because black's king does not play any role whatsoever in stopping the white pawns.
And now the h-pawn is just going to push. to the 6th row.
Yep, that looks good enough. Black's idea, though, is to keep attacking both pawns. Black will maybe go after the pawn next to the white king in a moment. Still not 100% easy. When in doubt, maybe just give a check with the white rook. Just gain a bit of time on the clock for Erigaisi.
They look like a really good team, those white pieces.
Yeah.
All just protecting each other, just following each other up the board.
That's what we call coordination in chess, when they're all within the same, they're all controlling the same area, they're all protecting each other. Okay, Magnus frowning there.
Yeah.
This is a very natural check. Where does he go with the black king? You don't really want to go to the left, you don't want to go away from the action. But the problem is, if you don't go away, you have to go down the board, also further from the action, further from the white pawns. And the one thing that Erigaisi has to avoid, he cannot let black give up his bishop for white's 2 remaining pawns, because rook and knight can't beat a rook on their own. That's a drawn endgame.
Okay.
So that's Magnus's one trick, if he can somehow give up his bishop for both of the white pawns. You can give up the bishop for one, but you have to get rid of both of the pawns. Get rid of both of the potential queens.
Okay. Magnus, he has stacked up a lot of time on the clock, so he does have time now to think about a strategy to save this game. But it's not looking good. And Erigaisi seems so confident, so calm.
It's that typical, we talked yesterday about body language, right? Every player has a certain pose. Yeah. Mine is like normally like this, but Erigaisi, it's just always with a hand on his head, just never flinches. And okay, the king goes further away. Black is now surely going to attack white's f pawn, the pawn next to the white king.
Yeah, has to step up 3 squares, and there we go. It's attacked. Now, how is he going to defend this pawn?
Yeah, it's not easy at all, actually, to defend both of your pawns. The problem is, if you defend this pawn with the white knight, you get in the way of the rook, maybe. Do you have to give up one of your pawns? But if you only have one pawn remaining, suddenly the winning chances might disappear. Magnus fighting like a lion, it's got to be said. I can't believe I wrote him off. What was it, 20, 30 moves ago?
I thought the game would have ended a long time ago, to be honest with you. But Magnus, he's keeping the game alive. And yeah, Erigaisi has given up one of his pawns.
Okay.
He's banking everything on the H pawn.
Yeah, it still feels winning, but this is the type of position, the evaluation bar, I'm so confused. It should say either +10 or it should say 0. The fact that it's kind of +3 means it's probably winning, but...
You don't think it's looking at a position where black has given up the bishop?
I'm not sure, Jovanka. It's really hard to say. OK, black's bishop took a pawn, and now it's all about white's h-pawn. So white needs to win the black rook for his pawn. He doesn't want to allow the bishop to get back onto the long diagonal and stop that pawn advancing. Is Magnus in time?
OK, so I've pulled up the table base, and it says it's losing.
OK.
But OK, it needs to catch up with the current position.
OK, so objectively, Erigaisi is still winning. But now the margin for error is smaller. He was completely winning the whole, well, most of the game now, but Erigaisi, and he had a, you know, he could let a pawn go and he's still winning, but he can no longer allow Magnus to fight back.
But so if he queens, and the black rook takes the queen, but the rook is in time to take the black rook, then it's winning for white.
Then it's winning. So he wants to give up his... Black wants to give up the bishop's life for the white pawn. He doesn't want to give up the rook's life for the white pawn.
Yeah. So the winning kind of idea is that the white king should come forward, help support its pawn, and...
Yep. So in this position, support the... He plays it, Erigaisi. So you support your pawn, you've freed up the white rook. The next move, you want to use your rook to go up 1 square, maybe, and promote this pawn. What happens, I guess it's just difficult for the black bishop to ever land on this diagonal. The problem is if you ever land here, then the white knight is going to come back, and these types of tactics where there's going to be kind of double attacks and forks, that's maybe going to prevent black from getting his dream set up. The black bishop needs to somehow get to this long diagonal. If it can, it's a draw, but he can't do it safely. That's why he moves his rook. Now, for example, if the white knight steps forward, I guess his idea is to use his bishop. The bishop will sacrifice its life, not the rook.
Okay.
And that's why Erigaisi steps back with his knight to stop the bishop using this square.
Yep.
We do have a result. It's a win for Mamadiyaro with the black pieces in game 1 against Abdusatorov. a long game ending up with a win for Mamedyarov. And just looking on Chess24, it looks like Abdusattorov lost, just went down to 0 on the clock. I don't know, but it looked like he was losing on the board as well.
Yeah, and talking about losing on the board, all Erigaisi has to do is actually step forward with his rook and support the promotion of the pawn.
That was winning immediately.
That was winning immediately, yeah. Instead, he gives a check. It's okay, though.
You can do it
still
now.
Lost.
Can he do it now? Bringing his rook up 1 square. White's rook, if it goes to the 8th rank, will support the promotion, there we go, of the white pawn. I'm struggling to see what black can try. OK, he goes for the black knight, for the white knight, sorry.
Yeah, and again, Magnus setting all the tricks. It's not possible to promote the pawn because there would be a whole load of captures and trades.
And look at Magnus, he's put his bishop as far away from the white knight as possible.
Oh,
now is it a draw?
This move is now a draw.
Wow.
The knight moving to the g4. I'm just checking the table bases here, and it's saying now it's a draw. That knight move was a mistake.
He's allowed black's bishop onto its dream diagonal.
Oh,
now,
no.
How can you ever win the black rook for the pawn? How can you ever block the black bishop? It's just got its perfect long diagonal. It actually makes sense that it's a draw now, unless Erigaisi can somehow land a knight fork or land a trick, a double attack. Where was the win, Jovanka? It must have been just a few moves ago. And Erigaisi now has to do it all over again. He has to win it from square one.
Yep.
Whoa.
Yeah, so, OK, the moves are coming fast. But yeah, he'd missed that elementary win that we kind of pointed out. But it was the knight moving to the g4 square. That was a critical mistake. There was only one chance to save it.
Yeah, and now that black bishop is perfectly parked. And black's rook is just doing such a good job of harassing from behind. And maybe we can just show the win while the players are now battling it out. This one is going to go on for a long time. But in this position, he blew it. He blew the victory now, Erigaisi, by stepping away with his knight, allowing the black bishop onto this long diagonal. And now the game's going to go on a long time. But for example, there were tricks, for example, moving the knight forward, threatening to promote to a new queen if the black bishop steps onto this diagonal. Now you can simply, I think, remove the... I'm not 100% sure, actually, remove the bishop and then block and try to make a new queen. But back in the game situation, Erigaisi is trying a similar idea. The knight is blocking the rook, but how do you block this bishop?
You can't.
You can't? You think it's a draw now, Jovanka?
It says, hang on, let's go. Draw.
Draw.
As long as this bishop stays on this diagonal, it's going to be a draw. Nothing for it.
Yeah, for example, just to highlight once more, this endgame, even if you make a new queen, which he might try at some point, if you make a new queen, win black's bishop, rook and knight against a rook is a draw. It will take some work, but he'll hold this easily, Magnus. I don't think he would ever lose rook versus rook and knight.
How impressive is that? That was completely losing.
Yeah.
Totally lost. And, wow, Magnus showing us all why he's such an endgame maestro, you know.
And also defend them.
I had written him off. He was 2 pawns down. Erigaisi had the control, and it looked like he was completely outclassing the world champion.
I said he was about to resign, Magnus.
Yeah.
I mean, he's just miraculous.
Yeah, and his Aimchess resourcefulness stats are going to shoot off the charts now, Magnus.
Oh, yeah.
But Erigaisi, the advantage capitalization, just lacking there today, lacking that killer instinct.
I mean, so if this game finishes in a draw, as we think it will, how do you think Erigaisi can come back from this? Because this is going to be heartbreaking, and the brain is not going to let him forget that he could have won. So in so many ways, the brain likes to do this to you as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, he wouldn't be human if he wasn't just devastated by this draw. I mean, it will feel like a defeat, simply.
I mean, do you think that he will manage to come back from this, or do you think that now Magnus has a decisive advantage, I would say, in the rest of the match?
Magnus will have 2 whites out of the next 3 games. Magnus will have that massive confidence boost. He'll think that he's got away with murder, Magnus, in this game. And if he can survive this, the world champion, then he'll think he can survive anything. Erigaisi suddenly will lose confidence in his own.
Yeah.
In his own his own chances simply in the match.
Because when you draw this type of position, I mean, you think you come out of it with such a buzz, and it feels like you've almost won.
Yeah.
And the king just moves away, but it doesn't change the situation that it's still a draw. Black has the optimum defensive setup. You know, bishop is on the perfect square, rook is doing its job. It's all good. I'm just looking at it. Every single move that Black plays is a draw.
Yeah, unless you blunder your rook or bishop.
Yes.
In one move, you draw. You can move the black king, draw. You can move the black rook back to attack the white knight, draw.
One more move that is perhaps natural, that is a terrible move, is actually moving the bishop to the d4 square, where it's lined up with the rook.
Yeah.
That's the only kind of move I would say that's...
Black's bishop is actually perfect, just very safe. This is actually nice practical play from Carlsen, just putting his bishop far away from ever getting into a knight fork. Black's king will never really get checked by the white knight in the near future. And, OK, Magnus, he's got 1 minute, built up a bit of time.
They played now for 61 minutes, super long game one in this quarterfinal match. The other games were also very long in the first round here in the quarterfinals, but they have now finished the games, and Gukesh's report should be starting game two very shortly. The other ones should be starting shortly as well. These two will have a 15-minute break as soon as this game finishes before game two starts.
And... yeah, still no progress. We might be here for a while as Erigaisi tries to somehow trick Magnus, but Black's bishop is just a phenomenal defender suddenly. OK, coming back with his king. Do you think we'll see a blunder from Magnus here?
I mean, because the defense is just involved keeping the bishop on this diagonal, and as long as it doesn't put itself in any funny position, so if, say, for instance, same line as the king or the same line as the rook, it should be fine. Just the computer is just saying, just shuffle it between the A1 and B2 square.
Yeah, it's hard to argue with that. And here we go. Black's rook is actually going to annoy white by checking from the side. He tried checking from behind, so Black's rook was checking the white king vertically. Now he's going to check the king horizontally. And, OK, first a check from Erigaisi, but doesn't help at all. The black king can move to any safe square. And white's pawn is so close, but so far.
And there's no way he can use his white king to, you know, get rid of that
bishop, to kind of block out the bishop. That's what he needs to do. But unfortunately, this is where the black rook steps in. Every time he tries to set up a formation just to block that powerful bishop, the rook comes, harasses the pawn.
And actually, he's about to win that white pawn. We can't even see a scenario where white wins the black bishop for that pawn anymore. It's gone, the pawn, and we're going to see a draw any moment. I mean, what a result. We thought it was going to be so different.
Yeah.
The narrative would have been a full 360.
And I can tell on social media, on Twitter, everyone is like, Magnus! I mean, it's just an epic comeback. I absolutely agree with that.
Yep. And now, if Magnus wants to play it safe, he'll just take white's pawn, even at the cost of the black bishop, because that endgame is a draw. OK, we do go into that. He could also have moved his bishop, but this one... we'll get to learn some endgame technique, some endgame strategy from both of them.
I mean, this one is quite a simple draw, I would say.
Especially compared to rook and bishop versus rook, which we saw the other day.
Yeah, that one, you know, you have to know the defensive resources. Here it's just a case of just checking the white king. I mean, how long will they play this out?
I think we'll see Erigaisi try for at least 20 moves or so, maybe not the full 50. Yeah, as you say, Jovanka, the whole strategy for black. At some point, you will get your king pushed to one of the edges of the board, but you just check from afar and then pin the white knight. That's all you need to know. And just don't let the king sit opposite each other if your king is trapped on the back rank. But, yeah, we'll talk you guys through the points if and when they come. The key defensive strategies. Yeah, it looks like both players now, they're like, oh, what a game. They're both sick of this one. 100 moves, too many.
But Magnus must be happy to sort of prove that he can also defend these endgames that he usually...
Right. It's a kind of a form of domination over your opponent. You know, if they get these winning positions and they still can't win them against you. And there we see a check. And this is definitely an epic defensive try from Magnus. And Hadi Ahmad asks both of us, what's our best chess game of all time?
Our personal game or?
Yeah, personal game.
Oh, good question. I've been asked this a few times. I can never give a good answer because none of my games are perfect.
Oh, right.
OK, Magnus just setting a trick here. There's going to be a discovered check if the black king moves next turn. It looked like he was walking into a knight fork. Sorry, I got confused a bit there. But my best game of all time, I'll say Howell Korobov from the Grand Swiss last year.
Ah,
That was a good game.
nice.
Yeah.
How about you, Ivanka?
It was my game against Sassy Kiran at the British Championships in 1999. And it was the very first time I was playing someone who was Grandmaster strength. I don't think he was a Grandmaster. And I just thought that I was going to lose, you know, because I was playing with the black pieces. And I ended up playing really, really well. I kept surprising him. Maybe he played really badly, but I thought I played a fantastic game. And I came up with the most creative idea I've ever had in my life.
Oh.
And I was really nervous, actually, about playing it. And then when I did it, he just looked at me like, what? And I was like, but there's a plan.
It's always satisfying.
Yeah, the computer hates it these days. You know, when I checked it out, the computer's like, no, what are you doing? And I'm like, no, no, no.
I'm going to check out that game later as well.
See if you can spot my move.
I will. And meanwhile, the black king has been pushed near the edge of the board. The problem is it has taken Erigaisi a whole lot of time.
Yeah.
And this is the technique for Magnus. Now the black king is just going to run the other way, away from the white king, most likely. Normally, you want to keep your rook pinning the white knight, or at least checking the white king. Here, white knight can't participate in the attack anymore because it's pinned. So run the other way with the black king.
67 minutes long, this game right now. And only 2 rooks, 2 kings, and a knight left on the board.
Yeah.
And that should not be enough to win a game, right?
This is not enough. I mean, as long as the rook now gives a check from behind, and now this is David's point. The knight is pinned, the king runs away.
Yeah. As soon as the knight blocks a check, you run the other way from your opponent's king. And Magnus looking away, he's impatient for this one to finish. And the last capture was on move 102. So the 50 move rule will come into effect at move 152. Still got a while to go. One of the longest games of the tournament so far.
Yeah. Why are they not agreeing a draw? Why is there not a move repetition here?
I think Erigaisi is frustrated with himself. So here we were talking about chess manners, chess etiquette the other day. It's considered a bit rude to offer a draw if you're defending and can only hope to get a draw maximum, which is Magnus's case here. He can never, ever win. Even if he wins the white rook for free, it's still a draw, rook versus knight. But for Erigaisi, there's still some winning chances if black doesn't know how to defend. So it's up to Erigaisi to offer the draw. And we can't blame him, I think. It's that fighting spirit that we admire to keep playing. We don't like premature draw offers. We'll learn a bit from this endgame anyway. And there we go. A pin, a check, followed by a pin, and black's king will never be cornered.
And I have to say, some grandmasters have actually lost this endgame. I mean, they've been in worse kind of scenarios, like the king has been pushed all the way to the bottom row. I can remember Judith lost against Kasparov.
Yeah, Judith Polgar lost this once. I think, was it Svidler or Morozovich? One of those two lost this endgame once as well, so very strong players. But usually that's when the king's already in the corner and there's a couple of specific tricks. Here, black's king is not quite pushed to the side of the board. Erigaisi still trying. I think he's going to go the full 50.
I think so too.
Whole 9 yards.
Because when you're annoyed with yourself, you tend to play this position out. I mean, if it were kind of a natural situation where it was a normal game, where both sides played fighting chess, I think we would have seen a draw. But because Erigaisi had such a dominating position, he's not ready to let go of that victory.
Maybe it's good strategy for the match in general for Erigaisi. He's the younger player.
That's true.
Also, he's getting it out of his system. The longer he plays this one, the more he'll forget that he was completely winning earlier in the game. How about you, Ivanka? Have you had this endgame before, rook?
Once. I was on the defending side.
And you...
I drew.
You drew. Good.
Yeah, it was just...
And this is also finally a draw. Both players shaking their heads. Look at Erigaisi. He obviously knows he was completely winning this game. But now, it is a draw the first game, and in 15 minutes, Magnus Carlsen will have the white pieces in Game 2 in their quarterfinals. It was a long and interesting game, and here is today's Lisoveta Learning Point.